Hello, it is Friday, April 28th, 2023 at 9:26 Eastern Time, USA. I'm Mitch Miller. This is my video journal. And today's video journal is in honor of Michael Aiken, lifelong resident of Utica, Pennsylvania. I guess he moved at the end of his career, retirement, a little bit outside to Wyattville area. Michael Aiken passed away a few days ago, and we all know Michael's connection to robots. He worked at GE for 20 years, so I'm sure he was in coordination with automated assembly lines and so on and so forth. But outside of GE, he was a contractor. He learned how to be a contractor. I think he went to school for it. I think he was an electrician at GE or something like that, but he was a contractor outside of it. He did jobs for people around the Utica community very cheaply. He helped out his community to endless degrees. He put on a bunch of roofs around Utica using the help of his sons and his brother-in-laws and some other labor like myself and my dad. He gave me my first job working on roofs. I started on the cleanup crew, on the ground crew, running shingles up the ladder, cleaning up the broken old shingles off the lawn and the ground. Eventually I worked up to working on the roof, and when I did get up to doing that, it was a situation where Mike would get paid by the neighbor, and we kind of split all the money, not exactly evenly. There was more skilled, some of his sons were more skilled, got a little bit bigger cut. But basically you got a cut instead of an hourly wage, and it worked out to over $10 an hour back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. That was really good money for a 15, 16, 17-year-old. So this kind of communal way of splitting the money amongst the crew, doing jobs much cheaper than other contractors would charge for community members. All in all, he was a good guy. He wasn't a communist. He just wanted to help his community. And he thought the people who helped him, he bid the jobs. He wasn't up on the roof that much. Instead of taking a big cut for himself, he organized the labor, organized the job, got the job done, and was very good at helping the community and helping his family and friends that worked underneath him. He was a great guy, Michael Aiken. So on that note, I want to talk about Utica. As I said, and Michael passed, he had a battle with cancer. I wasn't aware that he'd been battling cancer for several years now. It was in remission, and then it came back in his throat and spread to his brain. I want to talk about Utica. I want to talk about how there might not be a system Sudan where we overhaul all of Sudan's systems so that there's anti-corruption in that country, anti-corruption programs. Probably wouldn't find the billionaire investors to invest in that anyway. It would fall on militaries who are more concerned with gearing up for a possible European war. So they're focused on churning out more weapons in case the battle in Ukraine turns into a war over Europe. Right, so they're not going to invest money in Sudan. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality of things. So there might not be a system with Sudan unless some billionaires step up and say, we'll fund this nonprofit technology startup in your country, overseen by Mitch either remotely or in person. There might not be an Operation Oligarch, where I'm on a nice-sized former Russian oligarch's yacht, establishing neutral equipment at sea level so that supercomputers have a reference point for all the other military equipment that they're tracking and communicating with during this war in Ukraine. That might not be happening. You know, I'm not holding my breath. I know that's delusional to think that the military would tap me to do those projects. They're happy with the power systems and structures in place, and they don't want to take any steps to reorganize the technology sector so that it makes sense, so that it's not entirely profit driven, but more to help the prosperity of people around the globe. So what can we do? What the military could do for very low investment is invest in Utica, Pennsylvania. I propose it in the Novel Femme Party. I'm not talking about that program. I'm talking about other programs that I've suggested. So we can do a double whammy on Ken's farm if we act pretty quickly here this year. As you know, I've done a video series where I grew bean plants next to a Wi-Fi router and away from a Wi-Fi router. Found that the bean plants next to the Wi-Fi router less grew than out in my garage away from the Wi-Fi. We can take this, we have the opportunity to take this experiment to the next level, release ARPA funding for this or whatever, and we can take Ken's farm field down in the campground before it is planted, and we can put a high-powered wireless frequency emitting device in the middle of that field, right? One that would reach out to all the campsites at ground level. We want it down at ground level so that it can affect the plants around it. We can see how it affects the soybeans or whatever planted this year in that field. So we have a pretty high-powered radio frequency, wireless frequency device emitting constantly. We run a power line out there and a data cable off of the cottage and emit an internet signal, a wireless communication signal that reaches out to all the surrounding campsites. And you can look at the map on FrenchCreekFarms.com. So double whammy, we have that to see how the plants grow, and then this can be connected to the other project I suggested for farmers, the spider-like robots that if we develop one single chassis we can all agree on, these robots could be retrofitted to detect mines and dig up mines. We have 500,000 acres or miles of farmland in Ukraine that needs to be demined. We should get on this project as soon as possible. So what I would do is the road surrounding the farm field, we can have these robots walk around the road surrounding the farm field. Right? We can invite different robotics companies and talk about the different chassis and how inexpensive it'll be to develop those chassis to be sold to domestic farmers for methane reduction, manure. The robots will, the test phase and the domestic sales of the robots would be to collect cow and horse manure, take it to a central location to collect it, and to siphon off the methane off of those piles of manure to run a generator to recharge the robots. It might charge a battery that then charges the robots to continue collecting manure. Right, so we test these robots, we invite robotics companies to develop them and test them on Ken's farm. What I was thinking is if the federal government agencies do moved forward and want to ping their bank accounts off me and Ken's and my bank accounts, they could book up all of these campground sites or lease the ground from Ken from the equal to the potential of what that farmland, of what that campground at full capacity would be. I'm sure he would agree to that, to shut down the campsite for this testing. If we go the route of booking campsites, I was thinking if you book 2 or 3 nights through the week of the campsite, that federal agent, federal employee could come up to the farm, not camp in the campsite, but I would work with some horse farmers around Utica, and they could ride a horse on the farm, and I could even do a photo shoot of them riding a horse, maybe in their military uniform, police uniform, so on and so forth. But what we need to do is get people there to ride horses in circles around the farm field so that the horses produce manure on the road. Then after a day of riding horses around multiple piles, we can let the robots loose, possibly even at night, and let them collect the manure and take it to the hopper where the manure is deposited. Right? So we want to get people to ride horses, whether I have to hire and incentivize farmers to ride horses around that loop, or whether we can get government employees to book several nights, and then in return for that compensation, they might have to pay a little bit more, ride horses for 1 or 2 hours. Gets kind of boring probably riding around in a circle, but we can get some photos of them riding horses, so on and so forth. So that's my big idea for starting small in Utica. We can work around the existing reservations that have been made, the $4,000 in reservations that have been made. We can accommodate those people, or we can cancel the reservation, and we can lease this French Creek Farms, do a double whammy experiment. We're proving that wireless waves adversely affect, or disproving to some degree, adversely affect plants grown outdoors in a field. So we can have experts, or I can measure the growth of them, show if there's less root development, so on and so forth, as we get further and further away from the Wi-Fi antenna in the middle of the field that's at ground level. And then this Wi-Fi can be secured for these robots, so that we could do this in a similar regard on other farms. Put the single wireless emitting device in the middle of a field and have the robots cover an entire pasture field of cows or what have you, right? So I think it's a good program. I hope the military will fund it. We need these robots. We need to start selling them, agree on one design, and then we can package that and explain to the farmers, if we all buy the same design, they will be able to produce these cheaper and cheaper as we produce more for each farm, and we'll be able to pair that with robots we are producing to find mines in war zones, and possibly even be able to fit them to dig mines out of war zones. That would be ideal. Now, if we can dig mines out of roadways where the soil is very compacted, then it shouldn't be an issue to dig it out of looser soil situations. I don't know how we can get the leverage to dig down from a light robot like that, but at the very least it can map a path for a person to make it to the mine without getting blown up. It can stand above the mine and show exactly where the mine is so that they could dig around both the mine and the robot and pull the mine out, hypothetically. So that's it, the Wi-Fi bomb sniffing robot program. Hope you'll consider investing in Utica. Investing, if you made this a 2 or 3 year program, Ken could have expendable income to focus on his commissioner race and be able to resign from the prison if he so chooses, and take the pressure off of having to go into his prison job, which he doesn't really want to do because there's multiple of his personal reasons. So that's the idea. If you don't want to prep me to leave the country, don't want to see how moving me and my equipment and equipment that I've set as neutral by putting my USB drive into it with this video journal around the different points to see how that affects different areas of Europe or Africa. It's all hocus pocus that wireless waves are hypnotizing people, and excuse me, certain people are wirelessly sensitive, so on and so forth. You don't want to believe any of that hoopla. It all has to be human-to-human conversations. I agree with that. I think it still has to be conversations, even if people are wirelessly sensitive. It's just the context of those conversations might change if I'm in the field moving around. And as this video journal gets out to more and more people and more translations, those conversations might change. Anyhow, you don't want to do that? Well, let's focus on Utica this summer. We can get this done before the planning happens. I know the robots might not be there yet, but we can at least start with phase 1, and then all the campsites will have Wi-Fi until we develop the robots and I'm sure there's prototypes that can be tested very quickly here before the end of the summer. So, alright, so Wi-Fi bomb sniffing robot project. Hope it gets approval if none of these other ones are in the works. I think the supercomputers want to see these types of robots developed, and they want to continue to my experimentation with finding out if wireless waves affect living things possibly adversely, or at least affect them in some regard. Thanks for watching. Join me possibly next week when I talk about something else, or maybe I'll just stop doing these for an extended period of time to see if something happens as far as these projects. Alright, thanks for watching.